Hey everyone, and welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving straight into a moment that literally shifted the course of history, the spark of 1857, and the day one man decided he had simply had enough. Okay, let's dive into this. Picture the morning of March 29, 1857. An unusual, heavy silence hangs right over the barrack poor contentment. A cool breeze is sweeping across the parade ground, but let me tell you, that calm completely fails to hide the massive tension growing among the Indian sepoys. Standing completely alone, beneath the deep shade of a huge banyan tree is Mangal Pandey. His rifle is resting against his shoulder, but his thoughts? They're miles away, on his family, his village, and this deeply held promise to himself to protect his honor and never bow before injustice. You see, for weeks, these quiet whispers had been spreading from barrack to barrack. Every single soldier knew that something was about to change. Then, suddenly, the sharp sound of a bugle echoes across the camp. British officers start barking orders for the soldiers to assemble. Boots are striking the dusty ground in this perfect orderly rhythm. From the outside, the whole parade looks completely normal. But inside the hearts of these men, there's quiet fear, burning anger, and just intense uncertainty. But instead of falling in line, Mongol does the unthinkable. He slowly steps forward. His fellow soldiers notice the sheer determination in his eyes. Some want to stand right beside him, while others are terrified of the consequences of open rebellion. A British officer loudly demands that the men return to their positions. The command just hangs in the air. For a brief moment, time seems to completely stop. And then, Mongol raises his rifle. Now, let's pause right here. Why is this solitary soldier taking such a drastic, life-altering stand against an entire empire? To answer that, we've got to hit rewind and look at life under the British East India Company. The Indian subcontinent was vast and beautiful, sure, but beneath that surface beauty was deep pain and systemic oppression. The company had tightened its grip like a vice. We're talking crushing taxes levied on everyday farmers, local rulers having their entire kingdoms stripped away, and ordinary people struggling just to survive. It was literally a powder keg, just waiting for a spark. The guy destined to provide that spark grew up in a quiet village in the Balia region. Mangal Pandey was raised on these powerful stories of courage and sacrifice. His father really instilled in him the importance of truth and protecting one's homeland, while his mother taught him kindness and faith. This upbringing gave Mangal an unshakable conviction. A person's greatest wealth is never their gold or their land. It's their honor. Keep that word in mind because it's absolutely crucial. Like a lot of strong, disciplined young men of his time, Mangal became a sepoy. That basically means an Indian soldier serving under British or other European orders. He joined the Bengal Native Infantry, really hoping to bring some dignity to his life and, of course, vital financial support to his family back home. And this brilliantly illustrates the brutal reality he actually found. The Indian sepoys marched under the scorching sun from dawn until dusk, obeying every single order, yet they were treated as entirely inferior to their British counterparts. British soldiers, they got higher pay, special privileges, and basic respect. The Indian sepoys got lower pay, grueling marches, and systemic mistreatment. Every single insult they endured quietly planted another seed of anger. So the real catalyst drops months later in the form of a weapons crate. The barracks received a massive shipment of new Enfield rifles, which British officers proudly announced were vastly more accurate and powerful. Now, at first glance, this seems like standard military business, right? But that ordinary upgrade was about to spawn a terrifying rumor that swept through the camp like wildfire. To understand why, we need to look at how this weapon actually worked. Loading an Enfield rifle required a very specific, hands-on process. Step 1, the soldier had to physically bite the cartridge open with their teeth, then pour the powder down the barrel, and finally ram the charge. It's that very first step, biting the cartridge open, that became the literal breaking point. Here's where things get intense. Whispers began that the grease coating these new cartridges was made from animal fat, specifically cow and pig fat. For Hindu soldiers, the cow is profoundly sacred. For Muslim soldiers, the pig is strictly forbidden. This wasn't just a minor military grievance. This was a rumor that aggressively threatened the soldiers' deeply held faith, their ancient traditions, and their personal dignity. And when the soldiers inevitably raised these agonizing concerns, the British leadership's response was, well, callous. Officers just laughed off their moral panic, telling them point blank, your duty is to obey orders, not question them. They demanded blind obedience, completely failing to realize that the sepoys were not worried about military discipline. They were terrified of losing their souls. When people are backed into a corner, they act. Secret nighttime meetings started happening right after sunset. Groups of soldiers would gather in the dark behind the barracks, safely away from British ears. The fears totally consumed them. If they obeyed, they betrayed their core beliefs. If they refused, they faced severe military punishment. Just imagine having to choose between your livelihood and your deepest moral beliefs, staring down the complete loss of your honor. It was during one of these incredibly fearful meetings that Mangal Pandey stood up and delivered a speech that just cut right through the tension. He said, "A man can lose his salary and earn it back. A man can lose his position and regain it. But once he loses his honor, he loses everything." In that one moment of clarity, he shifted their mindset. He took them from shared, paralyzing fear straight to unshakable, individual conviction. Let's move to and see how this builds, snapping us right back to the morning of March 29, the Barrackpore parade ground. The tension from the rifles, the inequality, the threats to their faith, it has literally all led to this exact second. The command to return to positions hangs in the air, but Mangal Pandey's rifle is raised, pointed directly at the Empire. What happens next is just pure explosion. The soldiers gasp in shock. British officers are shouting these frantic orders. Confusion spreads through the ranks as men rush in every direction. The peaceful parade ground instantly transforms into a place of total panic. Horses are galloping across the field. Thick clouds of dust are filling the air. Officers desperately attempt to restore order, but it's way too late. The tension has already exploded into open defiance. In the middle of all this dust and shouting, some Indian soldiers just watch silently, totally unable to decide whether to obey or resist. Others quietly admire the courage of the man standing alone against an empire. Because Mangal stood firm. Although he was surrounded by arriving British reinforcements with the noise of marching boots closing in, he absolutely refused to surrender. He knew his chances of escape were fading, but every step he took proved that true courage is not measured by the size of an army, but by the strength of conviction. He knew that even if he fell today, his actions would not be forgotten. Eventually overwhelmed by superior numbers, Mangal was taken into custody. The British locked him up and thought, okay, problem solved. They genuinely believed they had just captured a single, disobedient soldier. What they didn't realize was that an idea had already escaped beyond the walls of Barrackpore. News of the incident spread rapidly from cantonment to cantonment. Across northern India, people were speaking in hushed voices about the brave sepoy who actually dared to challenge British authority. In all those villages, marketplaces, and military camps, one single question echoed again and again. If one man could stand against fear, why couldn't thousands? The answer to that would soon change the course of Indian history forever. The spark had been lit, and the fire was only beginning. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer. I really hope this leaves you eager to dig deeper into this massive turning point in history.